The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. You're listening to the Everyday Therapy Podcast. I'm JC Rader.
I'm Julianne Schroeder.
And we're therapists sharing tips, stories, and open conversations about overall emotional wellness. For more information about our community events, counseling, or online services, contact us at everydaytherapypodcast.com. And stay connected with us on social media. We're always posting tips and stories there. Please find us on iTunes, rate, review us. Tell us what you think. Give us your feedback. And we're excited for our guest today. But before we get into that, shall we talk about one of our sponsors?
Yes, always. We need to give a shout out to Therapy Space. We're so thankful to partner with them because we believe in the work that they're doing and offering some really beautiful boutique office space that's flexible for therapists that are either starting out or maybe they're just wanting to go part-time if they're a little bit more seasoned and wanting to scale back. So they're like I said, their space is beautiful. They make it easy.
Yeah, they have everything that you need set up for you. So for people starting off or not wanting all the responsibility, it's perfect. It's super cool. And they're giving our listeners 1 month off, 1 month free. For free.
Awesome. Yeah.
Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they have really flexible leases, so you can sign up. Did you say that already? For 1 day?
Yeah, but plug it again.
Yes.
It's really an important feature.
Yeah.
And I saw on their Instagram this week too, for any therapists or mental health professionals that are looking to provide CEUs and need a space to do that they're opening up.
That's amazing. Yeah. We'll have to hit that up. I need my CEUs for next year.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Well, thank you, Therapy Space, again. But yeah, shall we talk about our guest today and our topic?
Yes, we shall. And I am so thrilled on so many levels why I get to introduce the guest today.
Yeah, this is your buddy.
She was supervisor, still is a mentor in a lot of ways, and a dear colleague and friend, the one and only Jessica Callicutt. She is
and
so
what
special.
Is it? Yeah. LPC-S,
RPT-S, CEDS-S, and CC.
And what does that all mean?
I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Texas. I'm also a registered play therapist and national supervisor, and a certified eating disorder specialist and national supervisor. And then I'm also a national certified counselor.
Goodness gracious.
God an alphabet.
Have you gone through the whole alphabet? Any plans to add any more letters?
Not right now.
No? Okay. When can I get you to add RYT?
We'll talk about that.
Yoga teacher.
Maybe in 2020.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Julian, tell us about Jessica.
So Jessica is beyond qualified at what she does and has invested her time and energy in, let's say, 10 years plus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I first started working with them, 2004.
Yeah. So I learned from the best of the best when I was going through my intern experience because I also have a specialty working with eating disorders.
Yeah.
And it's cool because we also get to co-partner doing some different work and a little bit more preventative and outreach and making sure that all girls and women can come together to look at how they view themselves. So through the Embody Love movement, we are partnering together on bringing those workshops to change the conversation of how and the way that we see ourselves to be more loving and to contribute to meaningful change in the world. So, yeah.
Anything else that we left out, Jessica? I feel like I've heard your name since I've started as a counselor, as kind of like our community's eating disorders specialist in the area and like running expert. So I do just want to kind of put that out there.
I don't know,
to
she's
our
a
listeners.
big deal. And she's so humble. She's so humble.
like,
She's
no.
blushing right now.
Yes.
So I'm talking for her because I know her. And so, but I'm going to, like, this needs to happen because truly, I think any of your clients or professionals that you've worked with can attest to just how invested you are in being able to help in this way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, like, would you mind sharing, I guess, just like a little bit how you got into the specialty work and why you're so passionate?
Totally. Well, I think I knew I wanted to be a counselor for teenagers from my own struggles as a teenager. And so I had a lot of my own personal counseling to really help me with some different things I had gone through. And then I first thought I wanted to be a doctor, but then I was like, no, I really want to be in the chair and like help other teenagers so that they have a safe and supportive person when they're going through high school, because it sucks. So during that time, I've had a few friends who had struggled with eating disorders. I have some friends and then family members who've always struggled with eating disorders, dieting, disordered eating, that type of stuff. And so I just decided I wanted to like do something about it. And then I started working at Children's in the adolescent unit when I was in grad school. And I didn't know, but it was like 80% eating disorders. And so I just kind of went in for a job of working with kids while I was in counseling grad school. And then I fell into working with this population and just loved it. And have been doing it ever since.
Yeah, you really loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gosh, that's a while.
Yeah, and I appreciate you touching on like just your own experience of receiving support as a teen, because there's so much going on, and in terms of like how we view ourselves, and we can latch on, and you know, talking about body image and just how susceptible we are to others' influences. Can you speak to a little bit more about like what support you got out of therapy, or like?
First of all, I still go because I think it's important.
Yeah, we all do.
And I think that, I think that's just an important thing to say.
Yeah.
Because I think we're constantly growing. And so support in, I'm trying to think what I got out of it. I mean, really, I found this writing that I did in grad school the other day about my first experience in counseling, which very timely. But I just really felt like heard and somebody to validate and understand, because I was kind of bullied and picked on, and that really impacted my view of self. In fact, first real ever body image struggle, I found a paper on that the other day when I was cleaning out my stuff, and it talked about how I was confident and like I was really excited because my dad had this jeans company that he repped, and they had all these different colored jeans. So like back in the early 90s, to be able to wear like turquoise jeans or yellow jeans or whatever. And so I was so like proud of it. But then kids would comment on that for me. And then other people would comment because I could fit into like some adult size clothes and I like shouldn't because of my age or something like that. And so that just really, I think, impacted me. And so there was different bullying throughout, and just comments and critical components. And so to have somebody understand was awesome.
Yeah. How did that affect you? Like, we've all had those experiences, you know, too. But I guess, and Julian, we can speak to it too.
Yeah.
Of, like, remembering back to those comments or experiences. Like, I guess, what did it specifically look like for you?
I'm trying to think. Like, I think like the diet mentality with all of my friends of like, if they're saying like I'm too big, and I always felt like I was too big. I was kind of one of the first ones who hit puberty. So I was taller, then I was bigger because people gain weight around puberty. I don't know if people know that. Shocker. But I think that's when a lot of professionals and even parents in their best interest of trying to support their kids will like suggest diets or things like that. And that was kind of suggested of, we need to watch what you're eating or watch what you're doing.
I did not know that.
Yeah, kids actually, girls
That's
specifically will gain gain an average of around 40 pounds as they're trying to start their period and menses and go into puberty.
And that's very natural and
yeah,
just a part of it.
Yeah, because your body has to like significantly increase its body fat percentage so that you can go through this process. And yet when we look at stats, that's oftentimes when people are getting concerned that they're gaining weight or getting a little chubby or whatever the word is that they use. And so people start suggesting dieting behaviors to compensate for that, not knowing that this is like developmentally what their bodies need to do.
Right.
Just to be able to be.
It almost feels like there needs to be like this mental, emotional coach, or like not a diet, but coaching versus this physical, like eating diet. Because like it's just flip-flopped in that sense.
It's education.
Yes, education. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
More precise. That's what I was trying to get at. Education.
And yeah, not only for parents, but for the medical professionals. I know, I mean, I think you shared this with me, and I've since then just really reflected on the fact that you know, love doctors, have some doctor friends, but there is so much to be learned in med school that the amount of time that they really look at, say, eating disorders in the whole scheme of learning is 6 hours, correct? Is that right?
It's actually a little bit less.
Or is it 1 hour? Okay.
Yeah.
Where did I get, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I believe like through the CEDS stuff, just that they get like around 6 hours of education on like psych until they go into their rotation. Like in med school that third year, they spend like different time in psych and they get to like practice or be med students in there. But then like 1 hour specific to eating disorder training is what I have been told. And then after that, like any of the other doctors, once you choose your specialty, then that's when you really get more into that. And I'm totally speaking of, I'm not a physician, but this is some of the information that I've been told, so don't hold me to it 100%.
Yeah.
Just disclaimer.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and that makes sense. And I think that a lot of illnesses, you know, can correlate with stress and like mental health issues. So it is a little lopsided regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, like I've had clients who can distinctly recall experiences at the doctor's where they were told that they needed to lose weight. And I think it's, you know, I love the health at every size movement and how that's coming into play because not everybody knows, right? Words cannot cause an eating disorder or impact, right? But to know that there's certain personality temperaments, like when genetics is what is the main factor, and then something is triggered, and to be susceptible at certain, you know, personality or age-wise. Like not everybody knows that. So we're not saying that words can cause an eating disorder, but I mean, I will share and be personal too in terms of like when things, as far as my disordered eating happened starting in high school, my mom and we decided to go on a diet together. And I know my mom didn't mean anything by it. I was uncomfortable in my body. I had, like, it was puberty and I just had, you know, I still am curvaceous, but it was,
I like that.
Yeah, curvaceous. And I'm proud of it now. But anyways, so she suggested going on a diet together. And she had no idea that for me, like, the dieting, like, didn't stop because she had no idea that like I couldn't just turn it off. Yeah. So I mean,
it's kind of like this new learned way of being.
Right. Yeah. So whereas for her, like she was able to do it for a bit, and for me, then it just became compulsive and out of control. And so,
and I think that that's an important, because I think a lot of our listeners and people like don't know about like the anti-diet movement. Can y'all speak a little bit to that of like why diets aren't like helpful or?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of why diets aren't helpful, they set up this very restrictive mentality and mindset where it really places moral values on food and puts things into like good, bad, right, wrong, off limits, not. And so, and then we find ourselves in this very restrictive mindset of types of food. And restrictive could be, it doesn't mean like just not eating. It also means like, well, I'm just going to cut out this entire food group right now, or I'm not going to let myself have this, even though this is something I like, which can lead then to this like binging or overeating cycle. kind of this case of like, well, what the heck? So if I'm going to do this, might as well just do it. And then I'll get back to, because it's my cheat day, and then I'll get back to being good the next day, which then can contribute to this cycle of shame and guilt. And then it leads again to more of that restrictive dieting behavior. And so you have this
It's like
cycle.
really up and down.
It is. And it just goes round and round and round. And I think it's really hard, and it's so pervasive.
Yeah. And then like you're saying, Julian, it like becomes ingrained into like how you eat, how you see your body, everything.
Totally. Like I know for me, like when I was in high school, like my friends and I, we'd sit around and you'd get like a thing of animal crackers and a Diet Coke, and that'd be like your lunch. And if somebody had something else, it'd be, you know, different. But there was a lot of dieting even talked about within and among my high school friends and junior high friends, because there was so much focus on like body and weight and size. And then when I think culturally, like as our culture, like women, men, children, whatever, like we're so focused on food, really, and dieting, and it's like this multi-billion-dollar industry that's thriving off of our sense of insecurity, because if we can only change this or diet or control this, then it might lead to X, Y, and Z of like this better life, which is totally an illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we looked up that number the other day. It was like $400 billion industry that's like geared towards making you feel bad about yourself, so that you do get on a diet or
Yeah.
I
Thrive
mean,
on our insecurities.
I can't tell you, like, as a teen, how much time I spent researching all the diets and looking for the next one. Like, I think I told you, like, the crazy one where it was like, okay, if you don't eat breakfast foods for breakfast, then you're not going to eat as much. So I remember, like, oh, this is so, I'm like cringy. Like, think about, like, I would eat chicken noodle soup for breakfast, but like,
I hate chicken noodle soup
so
in
then
general.
What about cabbage soup? Our entire cheerleading squad did the cabbage soup diet one year, which was having all of this cabbage soup, and then like on day 4 you could have a banana, which I hate bananas, so I was like, oh, can't even have a banana because it's cabbage soup. And then the next day you could have a potato, but then once it was over, like nobody made it till the end. PS.
my
And then once it was over, we were all just like, oh, I want all this different stuff,
because your body is craving it.
Yeah. And I know for me personally, like diet upon diet, I've seen like friends, family members, or even myself have tried so many different things along the way until, I don't know, really, it was probably a good like 7 years ago. And I'm just like, this isn't working. Right.
Anyway.
It's not working, and it's not worth it. And I actually feel worse about myself. So like,
it becomes like
going.
super obsessive. Like you're saying, like so much time and energy and focused on this one thing that I'm not worthy if I'm like whatever size I am.
Yeah. I mean, I wasted a lot of time researching. That's one thing that's hard to look at it. Like, what could I have been doing? Where would I be? You know,
Right.
But I can't unwind. I think for me, obviously, like it's like, okay, what can I do now to help others?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that so many people can relate to that, you know, of being like, you know, so obsessive about it and like trying to reach that goal weight or goal size to just finally feel better about themselves. But there's another way. What is that way?
It's not really about the number.
What?
What
are you saying? What do you mean?
I just think it's about tapping into your enoughness. Like you're enough as you are, who you are, and worthy of love and acceptance, no matter what shape or size you are. Like, because we're us.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it makes so much sense, like, when you say it that way of, like, duh. But, like, our culture and my 16-year-old self just, like, did not get that.
Yeah. But we can, like, take care of ourselves and, you know, fuel ourselves appropriately and make, you know, like, balanced choices and, like, move healthily. But when we do it from a place of criticism, like, that's just where it doesn't work. So if we can love and accept ourselves and make choices, right? Because ultimately, you know, like, eating I don't know, like exercising is important, right? To
Right.
have a healthy routine,
Totally.
but to be so obsessive where you're like, okay, 5:30 in the morning, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And like I even, when I go on vacations or, when I schedule my day around exercise, that's when it becomes like obsessive.
Right. And or like bringing your own food or not making
Yeah.
it to social events, things like that too. Because I think when we really look at body image, it's like our thoughts, feelings, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors towards our body. So there's multiple pieces in it. It's not just being like, I feel awesome or I look awesome, because that's still not really it is. It's like how we're treating ourselves in the way that we're talking to ourselves and the way that we're feeling about ourselves. Like, in the way, even on that, and that goes to like the exercise point, and I'm all about balance. Like I love the word balance because I really think that's so appropriate. Like what if for 2 weeks you really can't make it to like do any physical activity because things are going on, and then your body's like starting to tell you that that would be helpful, and so you just go, and or like, I don't know, you eat the dessert at the holiday party right now because there's all kinds of stuff, instead of like making yourself eat like the carrots and hummus because you think you should, right? Like,
Yeah.
Kind of
all
forcing
about balance.
something. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the intent and motivation behind doing those behaviors, right? Of like, I'm still worthy if I eat this cake at this party, or I'm choosing to work out because I'm taking care of myself.
right. And sometimes taking care of myself is like sitting on the couch under a blanket and watching movies all day too.
Yeah. Yes. Preach, girl.
Prescribed a Netflix day. I'm not going to say a Netflix and chill day.
as Julian would say.
By the way, did I tell you this? Like, I just want to own this on air. I was talking about I don't know, as a healthy coping skill.
Yeah, like a self-care.
Self-care, said Netflix and chill, and I did not mean like sexually.
Afterwards, I had to tell Julian, like, do you know what that means?
But like relax.
Why did you say that?
Like, no.
Ziggy's laughing.
Sex is a form of self-care as well.
Well, yeah, no, not shaming you for sex, but I was not also meaning like that. I like when you told me afterwards, like my whole body lit up on fire.
So much embarrassment.
Oh my mom's listening. Anyways, okay, where were we going with that? Owning imperfections, accepting ourselves.
Balance,
Balance, yeah.
what it is. Like, I think an important thing that I really try and bring attention to culturally, and some of what we do through the Embody Love workshops and then with my clients as well, is really teach like what body shaming is. Because I think we're so conditioned to that completely impacts this diets, disordered eating disorders realm. But really, when we're looking at body shaming, first of all, we have this ideal of this like singular beauty ideal that we're all trying to aspire to, that's like this unrealistic thing, because everybody's like photoshopped and airbrushed and all that stuff, right? But yet there's something about it that we're all trying to attain. And then body shaming too is part of the comments and the culture and the conversation that we have with each other that reinforces that. So like when you're first walking into somebody or saying like, oh wow, you've lost weight, people think that they're complimenting. Really, you're body shaming.
Explain that a little bit more. Yeah.
So the idea behind it is if
You're saying like you're doing good because you've lost weight.
Yeah,
And
it's
you
like,
would be doing bad if you've gained weight.
right, and or something about like you look better, or that changes changes something
looking
about you,
bad.
right? Because if you're commenting on somebody and saying that, hey, you look great, you've lost weight, then oftentimes there can be the thought of like, well, did I not look good before? Or what was wrong with me before?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, why are you first commenting on my body before you're even like, hey, how have you been? I haven't seen you in a really long time. Like, how is your heart? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a common one. I remember for me when I was like, my self-worth came a lot from what others thought of me. That like, if I got that comment, oh my gosh, I was like on such a high.
Right.
And it was cool to see the shift because of the work personal work that I've been dedicated to do for myself of like as my adult self, somebody I hadn't seen in a while commenting like, oh, you have lost weight, and like I had that like, oh, did you really just say that to me?
Like I feel sad.
To ask me about what I'm doing with my life, that's so much more important.
Right.
But it takes, I think, a commitment to looking at and rejecting this idea, right? That talking about how we look is the first means of
Connecting, right?
Yeah.
Which I think even on that, then what then blows people's minds even more is the idea of like food shaming and body shaming. Because when people make comments of like, oh, you're so good, like you are so good right now, I wish I had your control, or like, wow, you can really eat that, but I can't, and they're comparing stuff on the plate, that's body shaming too. And I think one thing to really consider, like, you don't know this person's struggle. Like, they could be eating this and they're in recovery, or something's going on and they're trying everything they can just to like muster down this, and you're being like, whoa, good way to go, like awesome choice, good control, like you didn't have any of the bad stuff on your plate. And I'm like, people, stay on your plates.
Yeah, stay on your plate.
Stay on your plate.
Yeah, it's
like it doesn't matter.
It's this kind of prized thing of not eating so much on your plate. Like in our culture, like that's looked good upon.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that in the best way, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think it's like idolized and glamorized, or like we can associate it with control, or like you're so good. So again, it goes back to assigning some of that moral value to food. And really, we all have different bodies. Like we all have different body types. We all have different needs, because people can have allergies, or people, you know, can have medical conditions, things like that. And so they have to, you know, do that in a specific way. But it's almost like the way we praise it.
Yeah, I like what you said, moral. It becomes such a moralistic issue. So, oh, you're so good, you're so bad. And
I'm bad, You're so good, I'm bad.
I think that's the thing that like it gets me the most, that still like really irritates me. I mean, because I told you about the Starbucks incident, right?
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Did I tell you about the Starbucks incident?
No.
Let's talk about the Starbucks incident.
Well, I want to say one thing first, is that I do think that it is such a part of our culture that people don't even know.
Totally.
That, you know, that's something that is like shaming, right?
Right.
And so, because I know for me, like for so long, I did not know those things. And now I'm around all these eating disorder therapists, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want your worth to be contingent upon how you look. And I don't want to convey that to anyone. And I don't want to convey that to myself, you know. But it's taken me a lot of time to like unlearn that. Right. Because, it does feel like, oh, I'm complimenting you.
And I think that speaks to like the prevalence of like how we just do it just unknowingly, because it's so normal, it's so natural. It's like the way that we approach each other in society, and we really don't know. And so sometimes when we have these conversations with people, it really is like mind blowing in the way that we present some of these ideals, as far as stepping away from commenting on food and stepping away from commenting on body and trying to connect in a different way.
Yes.
You know, like, I don't know.
Yes. I love it. I just wanted to say that. Tell me about Starbucks. What the heck happened at Starbucks, Julianne?
Well, you know, I love Starbucks.
You love that Starbucks.
And I am...
We're looking for new sponsors, Starbucks.
I love Starbucks, drink coffee. I'm just usually a Pike's Place type of girl. And I usually don't get much else when I'm there. But one morning I was there and I was eyeing the pastry case, and I was drawn to the pumpkin muffin because I am a basic blonde girl. And I also just really love pumpkin.
But it's a pumpkin muffin.
Who doesn't like pumpkin muffins?
And I had woken up late, and so I needed something to eat. And I was hungry, looking at the pumpkin muffin. All right. Well, lo and behold, this guy next to me sees me eyeing, and I'm just, you know, contemplating my choice. And he's like, oh, don't you be looking at the bad girl shelf?
Talk about moral value on food right there. You're a bad girl if you have the pumpkin muffin.
And then it had this like perverted sense to it too. A bad girl.
I know.
Like, that's weird too.
He was older. I mean, should I tell you at the end of this conversation, like I wished him well, heard about his life story. He's a veteran. Like, like, so I turned it around. But I mean, that's really, I think, the work, like, and why I want to share is, like I had the opportunity to educate. And so I did it from a very, in a very mild mannered way of like, oh, like actually I don't really, everything in moderation for me. I think that works. And
All foods fit.
yeah. And then he shared from
foods
his
fit.
perspective of just like, I don't know. He's like, I forget, but I mean, just really, I think it comes down to education, and you don't really know. And I said,
Absolutely.
yeah. I was like, I work with dietitians that actually, know that like sugar is not evil, because I think that's one that really, especially with the studies about it being super addictive, and there's like, it's
Neither are carbs. No food is illegal. I didn't know if y'all knew that, but like, there's no food
Yes,
that's
thank
illegal.
you for saying
You're
that,
welcome.
because I feel like that is like still so ingrained, is that sugar is bad or carbs are bad. And it is, like he just didn't know.
Right. Yeah. So I just had to say it and like give permission for him to learn.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to buy into that, and I didn't have to get angry at him.
But there's so many teaching opportunities, and I think for me, like on like doing the embodied love movement, that's one of the ways of starting to do prevention and education and like teaching people what's going on and how can they change their conversation with themselves. And that's why I present to parents and like other professionals too, because we really don't know.
Right. And I know that we are aware because of the ramifications of what can happen, but, and really kind of ingrained in this. But why is it important that like parents and everybody needs to know about, with cultivating that healthy relationship and what they're doing?
Well, I think just from a developmental standpoint, even like children first become aware of their bodies at age like 2 and 3. And so they start to become aware of that. And it's so fascinating to me because with all of the media bombardment and messages and all of these different things, I'm going to check my note. It's like half of kids, 50% of kids age 6 to 8 believe they need to be thinner already. And they can recommend to you a dieting behavior of how to get there. And so that's 6 to 8, like think that they need to do this and then can tell you how. And then when we get to teenagers, like actively 50% of girls and it's a third of guys are engaging in some sort of dieting or compensatory behavior on a daily basis.
Okay, so how many in teens?
50%, like are
50%.
actively engaging in behaviors to like control weight, whether that's like smoking cigarettes or restricting food or like doing these different diets. Yes, they're like actively engaged in that. And so, they're starting this at such a young age. And then you think about the messages that get ingrained and ingrained and ingrained and ingrained, like, and that's, I think, where we have our societal problem.
For sure. And I just think developmentally, like your brain isn't fully formed. I don't know if this has changed in the past since I remember this research, but until you're 25.
Right.
So at 16 or younger, you're dieting. And I don't know, that's just a little scary.
It's very scary.
To be changing what your body should be intaking.
Right. And like trying to control it and restrict it or, using all these different means. And then from dieting, then you can have disordered eating, which is really engaging in these behaviors, like, and it becomes more rigid. Like it can start to impact how you show up in socially or like with school or things. That's where some of the obsession piece can come in. And then really from disordered eating, then you have eating disorders, which really the main difference in that is like the severity and how it impacts your functioning and ability to like show up in life, because disordered eating disorders, dieting, they're all similar behaviors.
Yeah, it's just kind of a spectrum.
And like how severe it really is, like how obsessive, using that word, it really becomes.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Yeah. Well, just more so like, and how in order to prevent, we need to be aware and educate and change these messages and instill balance.
Totally.
And, really affirm our kids from the start.
Right.
Well, and I just think about like as like we're intuitive from the get-go, and we almost like turn that intuition off at that 2 or 3 when we start getting these cultural messages that we do need to look a certain way or do a certain thing, to then we're not even in tune to our bodies to know like, okay, this is, and that's not for everyone, right? Like I'm sure there's like some people who don't have that intuition maybe naturally, but for most people, I think that we do have that natural intuition of like what's good for our bodies, what we need, what feels right.
Right, like
us.
hunger and fullness cues, not
Yes,
just like
that's-
necessarily
yes.
like parents don't let your kids leave the table until they've cleaned their plate. Like that's not helpful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I think Evelyn Tribole, I don't know how to say her last name, but one of
I
the
don't know.
major dietitians of intuitive eating would argue that we all are programmed, unless there is like some like medical exception,
Right.
to be intuitive, and that we can have a gauge of what our body needs and that we can learn to trust it. But that just, definitely gets lost.
Yeah, and she speaks to like being able to get back to that.
Yeah.
Like you can
Yeah.
like touch back into that,
Yeah.
but it takes like unlearning
Yeah.
some of those things you're telling yourself. And
I use the word unlearning a lot and unbecoming with my clients, because I think we're unlearning and unbecoming who we think we should be to become who we are, and to like learn ourselves and like start to trust our own intuition. Because I think when we also, I call it a culture of not enough. Like, because we live in this culture of not enough, where we're constantly like feeling not enough in so many different ways. And I think that's where shame's so prevalent. And then when you look at like dieting and eating disorders and things like that, that's the way of like to try and change it, because if I could change this, then I might be enough. And so I really work with parents on the prevention side to really try and like build up your kids from within, like help them to be the best that they can be. We don't need to be comparing to others, like just kind of stay on your plate, focus with yourself. Like how can you help them to tap into these qualities and build this self-image that's holistic, not just around like appearance.
yeah,
Like it's a part of the whole.
right. And I just think about as an adult, like I often work with my clients of like reparenting themselves, like
Yeah.
as already adults, of like being able to teach those. Like you can reteach that to yourself if you weren't given that growing up, you know, by our culture or your parents or whoever.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a couple things that parents could look out for? Because I know that's come up recently, like at Empowered, right? Yeah, and just as far as like what can parents do to help build that healthy self-image?
I think, one thing that I like to encourage them is like how to really help build their kids up. There's a difference in like praise and encouragement. So really just like encouraging them and trying to find qualities that they're like, that they like, and things, talents that they have, and things that they enjoy doing, so that they can really create this holistic view of self. And then from kind of like eating disorder prevention, recommendations, like help them to find something that they enjoy doing that's physical and movement, right? Because we all need physical activity as a way of taking care of ourselves. So help them to do something that's like fun and joyful and engaging. We talk a lot at Empowered, because different people present with food issues, just about how to offer that anti-diet mentality, and all foods fit. And so like it's okay to have the Cheetos, and it's okay to have the carrot sticks, and it's okay to have all of these different components. And so for parents to be able to present balance, and then I also encourage parents to check in with themselves. Like that's one of the biggest things I notice, that when I'm doing prevention work, or people come in for consultation as far as concerns about their child possibly developing an eating disorder. And I'm like, well, let's look at your attitudes and beliefs around food. And what are your messages, and what are your food rules?
What are you role modeling to
Right.
your kids?
Yeah, we check in on like food rules, because oftentimes you'll find that they have then what has become their normal language is some of that good food, bad food, right food, wrong food. We're gonna have the healthy stuff, or if it's not healthy, then we have the unhealthy. And so then I'm like, well, it might make sense while they're eating that secretively, because they don't want you to think they're doing something bad. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. And then thinking about too, addressing those that maybe don't have the healthiest relationship with their body and food right now. I mean, to like general population, because I think everybody at some point can struggle, right?
Everybody does struggle. It's not a can't, it does. Like, and one of my favorite questions when we lead workshops together, the first question we ask people to speak to in this phase is, I feel 100% confident about myself 100% of the time. If it's true for you, walk into the circle. Never, ever have I seen somebody walk in, because we all do struggle.
Yeah.
I think it's like, how do we learn to manage the struggle? Like, how do we talk back to that kind of like inner critic demon voice, and how do we build ourselves up?
It's this difference of like trying to kind of be perfect, trying to reach that 100% confident 100% of the time, or like how to manage it, how to tolerate the struggle, the I'm not feeling great.
Like now. I'm a little uncomfortable in my body right now.
That should be your goal. How to manage that.
Yeah, how can I, and maybe even like there are going to be days when you feel uncomfortable and not as confident, and still like, how can you not like abuse your body? How can you still take care of your body, not like restrict things or make things off limits for that day, or, that you only get to have this thing if you work out this much. Like, how do we get away from the compensatory behaviors?
Right. Or because you're so unsatisfied, and I just want to speak to binging, because I think we can easily go into the restriction, and there's so much shame around binging, but like that like is just, neither one is good nor bad in terms of it's still like impacts self, but when you punish yourself for how you look and then binge, and just get into that cycle. So how do you have a bad body image day, like you're saying, and still take care of yourself without resorting to punishing behaviors? And so how do you do that? What's the magic answer? Tell all our listeners this is what you're going to do.
I have this magic wand, and it says do this. I think you have to figure out for yourself.
Like it depends.
It depends, right? But I know, like, personally for me, some of the things I found is like, I still need to eat my food when I'm hungry, and like go and do things. Like, I can still have breakfast, lunch, and dinner even if I'm having like a not so rockin' body image day. And in fact, I need that just to be able to like operate and show up and think. But then also, like, I'm more than my body. Like, my body is a part of me. It like houses my little temple, and it's a little precious temple for my soul, and so it like takes me places. And so
that's such a cute image. I love it.
And like, it's a little temple for my precious soul, but like this houses me and takes me places. So I want to, and it's the only one I'm ever going to have. And so even if I'm having a hard time, that doesn't mean I have to treat myself poorly. So I really look at it as it's the relationship with yourself, and the relationship with yourself is the longest relationship you're ever going to have. P.S. And so what is it like to like treat yourself with kindness, to treat yourself with compassion, to be balanced and not to like abuse it? Because I think when I really think of dieting and or binging, things like that, like it's really this harmful treatment towards ourselves.
Yeah, it's that like trying to hate yourself into somebody that you love. Like, it should be a little backwards.
Love that. Hate yourself into somebody you love.
That does 100%. Not work.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
No. Because what really starts to happen is the more you love yourself and appreciate yourself and like know that you're worthy of love and acceptance no matter your shape and size, then you're not doing these other things because you're enough as you are.
And it can be a messy play, like messy to get to that point and not instantaneous, but
it's not easy.
Not easy, but it is possible.
No.
Like I know it, like not because.
Well, I think that we've all kind of been through, like for me, it was probably like a 10-year, maybe 20-year struggle from a very early age, like 12 years old probably. And for, we've all kind of, kind of all talked about little pieces, and it's not all rainbows and unicorns all the time. Like I still have hard days.
Right. Yeah. But I think the difference, in something that we instill in clients of like distress tolerance, right? Reference last episode too, by the way. But like, so we're not meant to feel awesome all the time. So when we say like, hey, it's okay to have a bad body image day, like you don't necessarily need to change the feelings and can't expect that it goes away, but can you trust that maybe tomorrow, like it won't feel as bad?
Yeah.
So like writing it out.
And even in like an hour.
Oh, for an hour.
Yeah.
And so I try and use like in this moment.
Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I feel a little crazy. Like, oh gosh, this obviously is not true because I didn't feel this way an hour ago, and I know I didn't lose weight or gain weight in that time period.
Right. But yet something comes on that all of a sudden you feel very different. And I like to use the word like uncomfortable instead of like a bad body image day or things like that, because then it's like bad and good, right? It puts in the black and white, healthy, unhealthy, right, wrong, like, and so I'll be like, so in this moment right now, you are very uncomfortable in your skin, like, and what do you need to do to take care of yourself? Or for my clients with eating disorders, that can oftentimes be a trigger to like, there's something else going on.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
yes.
I wanted people to hear this.
Yeah.
It's called The Red Herring. So there's this beautiful book, and it's called Eating in the Light of the Moon. But there's a specific chapter that is called The Red Herring that really talks about the illusion of the eating disorder, and how we get these things as people called fat attacks. And so that's how the book references, but I just think like anytime when you start to feel really uncomfortable in your skin, and oftentimes it's a sign that something else is going on, because if you're feeling uncomfortable in your skin or this fat attack is coming on, well, I mean, it's really easy to know what to do with that. You just diet, you do this, you change the whatever, you stop, like you break the cycle, whatever it is, like you know how to do behaviors. Right? But those behaviors often come in because we can be feeling overwhelmed, or we don't have the tools to get through what's going on, or we're just not sure. And so we go to this tangible thing that we feel like we can fix to make it better. But really it's because we're lacking the tools, and or just we're in this moment and a student and have never been here before.
Yes. That is so good.
And we're uncomfortable.
Yeah. So using it to kind of understand yourself, build a little bit of awareness of like what else is going on.
Yes.
Versus like these concrete things to like lose weight or change something.
Right. Like something's going on with me that I'm feeling like I need to do this to change myself. And I think you can look at other pieces, and it's just like changing the mindset, right? It's like something's going on right now that I feel like I need to change my mindset or get out of this mindset. And there can be any kind of behaviors outside of like dieting, eating disorders, whatever, binging, things like that. But it's like we're so uncomfortable in sitting in ourselves in that moment.
Right. And I think that a lot of people think that that discomfort goes away whenever they're at their goal weight or goal size. And that's still there.
Yes.
Right?
It's
like
still
that
there.
discomfort, that I'm not enoughness is still there. It doesn't go away with the weight, right?
You can just find something else to find, you know, like that's like with perfectionism, you can always find something else to improve.
But it's more about the internal work than it is about the external
work.
Yeah.
100%. Because even oftentimes when they get to that goal weight or goal size or whatever, it's still not enough and they want to go further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? So
And
it
that's
really
where
is about
eating
the
disorder
internal.
kicks in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mic drop, Jessica.
I know sometimes like we try to find like these segues and they're like, wait, let's just
Let's
that
just
simmer.
pause.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, shoot, are there any like resources or anything that people, if they want more information on how to learn this mentality, this mindset, this perspective, letting go of these food rules, this body shaming, these changing their intention, I think, what would be helpful?
There's so many.
I'm
like,
some of them, and we can list them
I
in our
don't know.
show notes too.
Oh, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. You already mentioned one, the light of the moon.
I love the book Eating in the Light of the Moon, and that's like myths, metaphors, and storytelling around like dieting, disordered eating disorders. And so it really looks at one's relationship with yourself and like how you're using your relationship with food or exercise or things like that to change it. It's amazing.
Okay.
There you go. We have one up there.
On it.
That's
yes.
it.
Yeah.
From breaking from diet mentality, one book that was really helpful and influential for me was to read Intuitive Eating, because it talks and breaks down like food rules and creating balance and like the whole all foods fit mentality, things like that. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. And so there's different books that I've read on like present over perfect, or and that one has a faith-based component just for people, just as a disclaimer. But I like the information that they had about like really just being present and how can you show up and be yourself, like in your enoughness without trying to be perfect. Because oftentimes when we try and present this perfect piece, we're not vulnerable, we're not present, like we're not ourselves, and it's really the solution too. So I think that's a really cool one, just in challenging perfectionism. And you probably have a lot of resources on perfectionism and stuff like that.
Yeah, I always reference any of Brene Brown's work
say.
in general because it's just all about shame. But The Gifts of Imperfection, I think, is a really like easy read. That's always good. But any of her work, because like all of this comes down to like what you were saying, is the shame epidemic.
Yeah.
This idea that we're not enough. So being able to challenge that, and her work's great.
I wanted you to be able to plug Brene
Thank
because
you.
you love her. I held off and wanted to get that back to you.
Anything to say?
Right? Okay, yes. Also, I'm just going to, I believe in manifesting Brene Brown when you're ready. I am here. Yes.
She is in
Between your
Houston.
12 books that you're, was it 12 or
17,
17 books? Oh my gosh. So just, you know, like, get to listen.
Well, and I think like another offering we're doing, so we're starting, Julianne, we, as in we, but the Embody Love movement, like we are certified facilitators and they're global now. And so you can find resources, whether it's for training or for someone to come and lead workshops. We do workshops, I think it's as young as like 10 or 11 for the younger girls through teenagers and then adults, and we'll divide them up so it's age appropriate. But really it helps to like talk about like what is body shaming and like let's break down this like diet mentality. There they are. And like how can you change the conversation with yourself and thus change it with others? Because I think it's got to come from us. Like we also have to change it.
Well, and I love y'all's work with Embody Love Movement, and I want to take it myself, as well as I've referred so many clients to it, and it's been so helpful for them. But it's experiential. So
It's experiential.
not that you're just reading this book or listening to this podcast and hearing like, you know, these new rules and this new mentality, but you are actually experiencing this new mentality.
Yeah, we're actually going to like take the rules that you've had and we're going to educate you on like media and culture and body shaming and all of these different things. And then we're going to break down these core beliefs that you have.
I like how you slowed that
break
down. Break down.
But that's what we're going to do, because you have to first be able to change it and let go of what's like no longer serving you.
See what's going on, like have awareness.
Like what is my actual like inner critic saying and how is this no longer serving me, so that I can like.
And y'all are doing one in January.
We are. For adults, we're going to do one on January 12th from 9 a.m. to noon. And then we have committed to just doing more of them in this next year. So we're going to be offering them more. And then we're also playing around with doing one for professionals. And so it's going to incorporate the actual like the workshop, so you can go through and do it, and then we're going to work on some things that you can do with your clients to help change the conversation stuff. But if you're going to be doing this work with others, you first need to do it with yourself.
Absolutely. And tell us, so just in case listeners are listening like later on in the year and we're past January, where can they find these events for you guys?
That's a great point. Well, Empowered, our office, it's empowered-counseling.com. So we have a groups and workshops page, and that will be on there. And then I am currently working on my own website, which is jessicacallicutt.com, to be released in 2019. And then Julianne as well. And so I would say between the three of our websites, and maybe even Embody Love Movement.
And y'all
be
can
empowered.
always reach out to us and just ask kind of where the workshops are and everything.
Yeah,
but we'll list all your
them.
websites on our show notes so people can find you guys. Any last tips or any last words you would like to say to our listeners in our conversation today?
Man, there's so many things.
No pressure, right?
I just think you're magnificent and enough as you are. Like,
I love it. All the feels.
you know, but I mean,
Yes.
I think like we talked about so much, like this industry thrives on our insecurities. And all of the messages thrive on our insecurities, because if we can only be this or this or this, then we'd be enough. And so like taking a moment to just really do a heart check-in and like love on yourself as you are, because of who you are, because you're magnificent and enough just as you are.
I love that. And that's so true. Like that's the work.
That's the work.
Yeah.
It's like self-love, you know, and self-acceptance. And sometimes acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it. And sometimes accepting is the first step before you can get to really that love, you know, because we have to be able to accept ourselves as we are and stop trying to change who we are.
Yeah. That's like the neutral, right?
Right. Like,
We love you.
Yes, thank
And
you
all
so
that you
much.
offer and all that you do. Thank you for being with us today.
It's my honor.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And please rate and review us on iTunes if you guys are liking our podcast, or share them with friends. And we'll see y'all next week.